Kinds of love, according to St. Francis de Sales. My dear brothers and sisters, when St. Francis de Sales wrote his treatise on the love of God, he was not writing for scholars alone. He was writing for ordinary Christians, for people like you and me, who struggle daily to love God and neighbor with a sincere heart. He understood something profound. Love is at the very center of our faith. Love is the heartbeat of Christianity. Without love, even the most heroic deeds or the most devout practices mean nothing. But Francis de Sales also knew that love is not simple. Love has many shades, many expressions, many faces. And so, in his treatise on the love of God, he takes us on a journey through the different kinds of love. Today, let us walk through some of these forms together. The first point for our reflection today is love in general terms, the root of everything. St. Francis de Sales begins with a simple but powerful definition. Love is a movement of the heart toward good. It begins with an attraction. We see something good and we are drawn to it. Then comes satisfaction. Our will delights in that good. But true love does not stop there. True love moves outward, pours itself into the beloved, and finally seeks union. St. Francis de Sales uses a beautiful image. Love is like a tree. The root is our attraction to the good. The foot is the first satisfaction. The trunk is the movement of the will. The branches are our pursuit. And the fruit is union and joy. What a picture! And when this tree grows toward God, its fruit is eternal union with Him. Second point for our reflection today is two main exercises of holy love. Among all the expressions of love, St. Francis highlights two as the most essential: gratifying love and benevolent love. First of all, gratifying love, which is also called affective love. This is love that delights in God's goodness. It is affective love, the joy we feel simply because God is who He is. Imagine gazing at a sunset, not for what it gives you, but simply because it is beautiful. Gratifying love is like that, delighting in God's perfection for its own sake. St. Francis de Sales says, this kind of love transforms us. St. Paul, for instance, was so filled with this love for Christ's life and death that he could say, it is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. Gratifying love draws God's perfection into our heart. Secondly, benevolent love, which is also called effective love. The second exercise is benevolent love, the love of wishing good for the other. Now, God is already infinitely perfect, so we cannot add anything to Him. But benevolent love makes us desire that He be glorified, praised, and adored by all creatures. It is the love that overflows in prayer, in liturgy, in mission. St. Francis de Sales describes it beautifully. Gratifying love draws God into our heart. Benevolent love pours our heart into God. One receives, the other gives. And both together make the circle of holy love complete. The third point for our reflection today is sensual and spiritual loves. St. Francis de Sales distinguishes between lower and higher loves. First of all, sensual or brutish love. This is love based only on appetite and sense. Left unchecked, it can degrade us. Secondly, spiritual love. This love is purified, directed toward higher things, detached from selfish passions. It is the love that prays, that contemplates, that serves with a clean heart. The fourth point for our reflection today is compliant and submissive love. First one, the compliant love, obedient to God's will. This love arises from both gratifying and benevolent love. It is the love that conforms itself to God's declared will, His commandments, His counsels, His inspirations. It says with Mary, "Let it be done to me according to your word." Secondly, submissive love, embracing God's permissions. Even deeper is submissive love. This is the love that does not stop at God's commandments, but embraces His permissive will, even trials, sufferings, and misfortunes. It is the love that says, "Not my will, but yours be done." St. Francis de Sales calls this the highest form of love, because it clings to God, and even in the dark, even when everything else is taken away. Fifth point for reflection today is imperfect and ecstatic love. First of all, imperfect love. Sometimes, St. Francis de Sales notes, a soul may lose charity but still retain a shadow of love. This imperfect love can still lead to good actions, but it is dangerous because it can give the illusion of holiness without the substance. Secondly, ecstatic love. St. Francis de Sales speaks of ecstatic love. This is love so intense that it lifts the soul out of itself, sometimes even beyond the body. He calls it the supreme consequence of love. It is not mere wonder, it is a burning fervor that can even make death itself sweet, because it becomes union with the beloved. Sixth point for our reflection today is other forms of love in the treatise. First of all, love of concupiscence, selfish love. This is when we love something only for the benefit it brings us. When directed to God, it is imperfect. For example, loving God only for the blessings we hope to receive. It is not wrong, but it is immature. It focuses on the gifts, not the giver. Secondly, love of friendship. Friendship, St. Francis de Sales says, is mutual benevolence. It requires three things: love given, love received, and the awareness of this exchange. When this is elevated and directed to God, it becomes something glorious, divine friendship, charity itself. Thirdly, affection. Among friendships, there are some that are preferred and more intense. This is affection. And when affection becomes incomparable and supreme, it is transformed into charity, the greatest of all loves. Fourthly, charity, the crown of loves. St. Francis de Sales reserves the highest place for charity, which he calls the perfection of love, the very goal of creation. Charity is not about what God does for us, it is loving Him purely for who He is. It is poured into our hearts by the Holy Spirit, and it transforms everything. It is the soul of every virtue, the fire that makes holiness burn. The seventh point for our reflection today is the journey of love. As we listen to these many distinctions, gratifying, benevolent, friendship, charity, submissive, ecstatic, and so on, we might wonder, why so many? St. Francis de Sales is not complicating love, rather, he is showing us its richness. Think of love like light passing through a prism. It is one reality, but when refracted, it reveals many colors. The ultimate goal is one: union with God. But along the way, we taste love's many flavors: its delights, its sacrifices, its friendships, its obediences, and so on. To conclude, call to grow in love. St. Francis de Sales leaves us with one great invitation: to let our love mature, to move from selfish love to generous love, from love of God's gifts to love of God Himself, from a love that seeks comfort to a love that embraces the cross. At the center of it all is charity, the pure supernatural friendship with God that never ends. And when we let charity reign, our life becomes what St. Francis de Sales himself desired: all for love, nothing by force. May we, like him, grow in this love until the day we see face to face. Live Jesus.